All right. It is Wednesday, May 18th, 2022. For those of you who celebrate 30 years ago and one day, 30 years ago on the 17th, the Chicago Bulls beat the New York Knickerbockers in a just heated 7-game series in the Eastern Conference semifinals. The Knicks really handed it to us, but the Bulls prevailed as they always did with Michael Jordan. Don't talk to me about 1995, but in 1992, my favorite Chicago Bulls team just took down the Knicks in as expected fashion as possible because, it's the Knicks. It's going to happen. And we celebrate this. It's the 30th anniversary of this, which will come up probably pretty often during this podcast because we are talking about May 1992 today on Helping Friendly Podcast Live. My name is Brian. I've got RJ and Megan here. We're going to bring on a very special guest, Benjy Eisen, here shortly. He has joined us in each of the last 2 months to talk through the spring 1992 Fish Tour. We're going to conclude that here today. Very, very excited about that. But before we do that, RJ, Megan, how are you doing? And what were your thoughts on the Bulls Eastern Conference semifinals victory over the New York Knicks 30 years ago?
Really just happy that it happened. And I thought it was good, generally good. I remember those days. I was definitely watching the NBA. I was a Pistons fan, so it was a little bit that was probably not good at that time for us. But otherwise, I'm happy for you still.
I knew you were a Tigers fan. I didn't know the Pistons thing. We should dive into this at some point because we had a lot of back and forth between the Bulls and the Pistons. Yeah. And I like Cade Cunningham. I'll tell you what, I like Cade Cunningham.
Brian, before Megan weighs in on the Bulls,
I can't
can I just say I have to say something to one of our listeners real quick before we start. His name's JR, which is my name backwards, but a couple years back in September of 2019, he sold me 2 tickets to Vita Blue in DC. And I was reminded of this on Twitter the other day that I think that as part of that, he said, could you give me and my buddies a shout out on HFPod and I said, sure. And I never did. And so even though it's 3 years later, I have to say thanks, JR, and thank you to JR, Forbin the Ascendant, aka Lady Beer, and the fine folks of the Pizza Party National Hotline. And so sorry I didn't do that 2.5 years ago, but we're here now. So Megan, what are your
late
thoughts
than
on
never?
Bulls? Yeah, I think so.
Making good on promises. I like it. It's a good way to start. As far as my thoughts on the sports event that you discussed, I grew up in Michigan, so I think my family were Pistons fans. I don't really know. My brother was a massive Michael Jordan fan, had the Wingspan poster in his room, still collects Jordans, has vintage Jordans, super into that. His daughter wears Jordans. So I'm a Michael Jordan fan. But I remember someone asked me one time, I decided that I thought I needed to have one basketball player that I liked when I was growing up that I was into. And so I chose someone that I thought seemed cool. And so someone asked me, who's your favorite Piston player? And I was like, Scottie Pippen, because that was who I'd chosen. But he's actually not a Pistons player. So even when I chose a favorite basketball player, I didn't know what team he played on. But I really like Scottie Pippen because he's a cool name. So
he's a cool name. Drastically underpaid throughout his prime. See? The man ended up on his back constantly throughout, just like you, constantly throughout the entire 1990s. There's no way the Bulls win 6 titles without Scottie Pippen. So you got the wrong team wrong, but you got the right player.
Yeah. See? So that's my thought about sports today.
It's a good thought. We'll continue to update you guys on our thoughts of the 1992 Eastern Conference semifinals, one of the most intense playoff series of my entire life. But before we do that, we have some business to take care of, and we have to talk to Benjy. Want to tell you all who are listening out there to please subscribe to Osiris Media on Apple Podcasts. We just recorded a fantastic bonus episode. I can't wait for you all to hear it. We bared our souls in many ways. Cannot wait for everyone out there to hear it. I will say no more. I think that if you want to know who we all are as people, this is like the evolving series of the bonus pod. Is like we talk about fish here. We get into the weeds of like the stats and where the band was at the time. And did we like this jam or did we like this jam? On the bonus episodes, we really dive into who are Brian, Megan, RJ, and Jonathan. So I'd encourage you all to check that out. You also get early episodes of shows like Undermine, as well as Sugar Maple that just celebrated its series finale. Amazing, amazing series. We encourage you all to check out. I also want to encourage you. I said this on Monday. We will be coming back in about 2 weeks with our quick hit series of this upcoming summer tour. If you are going to any of the shows in the first leg of the tour, Orange Beach, Charleston, and Deer Creek, hit us up on Twitter. You can hit us up on our personal accounts or on the HFPod account and let us know that you'd like to participate, and we will start to get you booked into HFPod quick hit recaps that we'll do the day after each show. So really, really excited about that, and would encourage anyone out there listening who's going to those shows to hit us up. We love talking to people who are on the ground at the shows to give us their insights. Megan, would you like to tell us a bit about our friends at Sunset Lake today?
I would love to. Sunset Lake CBD's line of smokable hemp products are for the old deadhead or the young fish fan. Anybody searching for a mellow body high. Smoking CBD has all the benefits of high THC cannabis without the paranoid and anxious side effects. With 9 different strains from this year's harvest, there's something for everyone. The Hawaiian Haze is awesome for an outdoor show, and Cherry Abacus is best for the end of the night. All of the flower is grown, cured, and trimmed by Sunset Lake CBD farmers. And even better, Sunset Lake CBD's farm-to-table approach gets you great pricing on premium CBD flower by shipping directly from their farm to your door. And Brian, I want to tell you, I think you should probably bring some extra CBD when you go see Trey at Red Rocks, because my parents asked me last night for your phone number because they would like to hunt you down at Trey at Red Rocks. And I think they would really love to smoke some CBD with you. I don't know if they've ever smoked CBD flower. They may have smoked other things, but I'm not going to call them out on that, but they would definitely probably love some CBD. So maybe you can bring some Hawaiian Haze to give to them at the show.
This is a good thing. I love passing around the word and the spirit of Sunset Lake. So I will do this. I can't wait this is like 5 days away. I'm going to be able to hang out with your parents. This is great.
Yes, they're really excited about it. So check them out today at sunsetlakecbd.com and use the coupon code HFPod and you get 20% off all your products. Sunset Lake CBD, farmer owned, Vermont grown.
Wonderful. And with that, we're going to transition into the sports segment of the podcast. I'm just kidding. We are going to transition into the main segment. We're going to talk about May 1992. We're going to welcome to the show. He just wrapped up writing the 3rd season of Undermine, Mr. Benjy Eisen.
Yay.
Hey everyone.
How you doing, Benjy?
Am I still really, I feel like I'm still zoomed in somehow, but
we're zoomed in on you right now. Yeah.
Yeah, it's weird. It's not normal because my laptop is all the way back here. But anyway, yeah, I'll just be larger than life today.
It's up close and personal as we talk through May 1992. How are you doing, man?
I'm doing fantastic. And I'll tell you what, Fish in May 1992 is also doing fantastic.
This is a very good transitional segue. Well done.
Well done. Benjy is great at the transitions. You got it, man.
You got it.
Just wondering why I'm up so close when I'm so far away. Something's up with my video, but that's okay.
It's part of the secret language. You just got to play turn, turn, turn. You'll turn around 3 times and then you'll be.
And then it does it. Nice.
So we have been on this journey for the last couple of months, talking through Fish's Spring 1992 tour. I want to go around before we jump into. We each picked a show that we want to highlight from this month, similar to what we did in March as well as in April. We want to talk as well about like the general vibe of this overall month. RJ, I want to start with you. What are your thoughts, generally speaking, about the spring 1992 Fish tour, and what are your thoughts on like how they conclude this tour in May?
Yeah, I mean, I think the 4/16/92 was one of the first, real bootlegs I ever bought. Remember like the CD? What's that? Was it called? Follow Me to Gamehenge or something?
That was
Something
it.
like
Yeah,
that.
Follow Me to Gamehenge. Yeah.
That was like, I remember buying that in, the early days, and I had the tapes also, and just being like, the sound was so amazing in this tour, and the soundboards were great, but also they were introducing so much new music. It's a great tour. I mean, Trey's guitar is, at least in the shows that I listened to from May, I mean, it's really, really prominent, and he's so just, I don't know, you can just tell that it's like building toward this peak of these early 90s where he's just unstoppable on the guitar. Those are my first reactions to going back to the shows.
Yeah, I kind of feel like this is the last tour where Trey's guitar completely leads the band wherever they go. And we've talked a bit about this. Like you start to hear in the improvisation this like democratic communication that's happening on stage. But like Trey's guitar is just like leaps and bounds ahead of the rest of the band in a lot of cases, and just like it's the star of the overall show. So I definitely hear that as well. Megan, what are your thoughts? You've been on this journey. You've listened to dozens of spring 92 shows in the last couple of months. I constantly get just like random texts from you about like how amazing this spring 92 show is, and that you wish you had gone back and listened before. What have your thoughts been on listening to this tour, and how do you feel like, just generally speaking, the band concludes?
Yeah, in March, it seems to me that it's really about like the connection with the audience. There's lots of like secret language, jokes, banter. April then seems to be like this turn inward to the music, and they start like listening to each other more intently and playing with more like a focused intent to try to go new places within jams and not just relying on Trey soloing. And I think May is just a little bit of a continuation of like almost like a little bit of a victory lap towards the end to me when I was listening to it, especially compared to like exactly a year later in May of 1993. 1992 May still seems like that moment when like their ambitions are still a little bit greater than their abilities as far as like a band. Like they're still not perfectly nailing, like if you think of a Reba in 93 compared to a Reba in 92, like the difference is so incredible because they're just so nailing everything in 93. So this is kind of like that last spring tour before they are really like in that place of just where they start taking like astronomical growth. And it's so exciting thinking about where they're going this summer in 92 when they kind of have this like practice summer of what it would be like to play all these sheds that they're going to then play in 93, right? When they're opening for like the Violent Femmes and they're going on Horde Tour. And it's like so cool to think about. That's almost like a practice run for when they're going to do it all by themselves the next year. It's really cool.
Bringing up the May 93 sound, we talked about 5/8/93 on the podcast. I think it was about a week and a half ago at this point in time. And it was so wild to listen to that in the context of listening to this overall tour, and to hear this band that a year later sounds like every idea that they've had throughout 1992 is being achieved, like song by song by song, and then to go back to 92 and hear like the foundations being set. I'm right there with you. It definitely feels like a combination of this month of what we had heard throughout March and then April, and kind of this reconnectivity with the audience, but also like continue to find avenues to take their songs outwards. Benjy, how about you? What are your thoughts?
Well, I thought that, well, for one, I think that the Spring 92 tour is kind of like a microcosm for that whole era of Fish, because we start out, there's Beta Fish, Baby Fish, right? And Beta Fish is up till 91, right? It went from Baby and Beta Fish, which academically and for completists like us, we want to listen to all of that. And it's really a fascinating listen from an academic standpoint. but it can also be a little bit tedious, some of those shows, except for or just, like it's laying the groundwork for these songs, and they're kind of learning how to do it. But there's the in between farms, and then there's obviously the Tellurides and things like that are great for repeated listens and going back. But for the most part, that's just kind of laying down the foundation. Spring 92 is really proto-Fish, right? And as we established last time, April 92 is considered the first great month of Fish, but I think by May 92, they become the best fucking band on the planet. And a lot of that, as RJ said earlier, it really was the one thing about May 92 that is unavoidable is Trey's dominance, right? And it is so mind-blowingly awesome that in its own right. But you can hear beginning in May 92, beginning in April, really, you can hear Mike Gordon really come a long way. Like, you can hear his progress throughout this tour. And also, as much as Trey leads and as much as Trey, I think we're all saying that because Trey is providing so many notes per second, and a lot of these mites songs, a lot of these antelopes, a lot of these yems all have they remind me of the 99 Trey trio tour where he had to carry the whole trio by himself. So he was kind of just fulfilling all of the functions. Rhythmically, he was setting the pace as well as melodically and laying down a cascading avalanche of notes. And he does that in May of 92, but the band is with him. And it's amazing to see there are specific jams throughout this month where you can really see how the filling the hay hole exercises that they did. This was a point. I don't know as you guys know, I'm a fan of Fish in the here and now. And I think that, what stuff that they just did at MSG is amongst the best they've ever done. And I see them as this continuing evolution, but I don't know, there's something from May 92 that they were kind of at a peak at, and it went from May 92 and through 95, through December 95. And that's that the improvisation then was turn on a dime. And it wasn't just now when they do type 2, the jams kind of change from texture and also who's kind of leading the ball. And in spring 92, we begin to see this type of jamming that in 93 dominates, in 94 is just over the top, and 95 brings us to December 95. And that's this roller coaster jamming where they can go to different scenes entirely. They can change up everything about the jam, and they're all together. They're all right there. And Trey's leading, sure, but the rest of the band is, they're on that same card as he is, 100%. And I think that May 92 really, there are some holy shit moments when you listen to May 92 that you don't necessarily get those holy shit moments before the spring tour, and April has them, as we talked about last time, but I really feel like May just has a lot of moments where you look at your speaker and you just go, holy shit,
Yeah, I got that throughout listening to a number of these shows. Like, one thing that I noticed as listening to them, like there's a true combination of the gimmickry and the energy around the secret language and narration in songs like Forbins and Ikulish that is starting to become front and center in a way. Like, if you think about 1992 through 1995, this is really where all, they've told their Gamehenge stories in the past, but this is really where, like, the idea of getting a Colonel Forbins or an Ikulish starts to take on kind of legendary status at a show, because it's happening on a more like rare level, but also the stories that they're telling specifically in Colonel Forbins are going to inform shows that happen 3-4 weeks from now, 2 tours from now. And they're going to start referencing these things back across larger tours. And you hear that in May in a way that I didn't hear really at all in March. And it started to hear in bits up that West Coast run that we just like sung the praises of 416 through 421. with a few shows after that. But then combining that with what you were just talking about, Benji, the type 2 improvisation, the hay hole jamming that's starting to really take place. And I think we're going to get into that with like a few of the shows that we have here. I was listening through all the shows that we have we have listed here, and the commonality with all these shows is they all seem to have rarities that you weren't hearing in early parts of the spring tour, and also a further step forward with improvisation and jamming. Benji, sticking with you before we jump into our shows, you kind of you alluded to this, but just like quickly, how do you see the overall spring 1992 tour impacting the band going forward? Let's think in terms of like the next 6 to 8 months before the summer or before the spring 93 tour.
Well, I think that they really got their set list kind of their I really hesitate, especially this phase of their career, I really hesitate to use the word formula, because I'll use it as long as we're aware that part of the formula rests on an unpredictability, right? So even at their most predictable, they're still impossible to predict, which is why we play these fantasy tour games and why they're so engaging, because we can pick up pattern recognition, but at any given time, they were never fully predictable. But I feel that in spring of 92, and particularly in May, at the end of what this tour is like 50 some tour dates. And by the end of that, they really got to see what worked and what didn't. And they really make it a point by May that every show has certain elements present. And the repertoire at this point has finally gotten large enough that they can do that with different songs. They're not just figuring out the same 50 songs. They're moving more parts around. There's only a few tweezers this month, for instance, and all of them are incredible. But I feel like every show that they do I Didn't Knows, they do some acapellas, especially with the venues that they're in. They do the microphone-less ones where they're just literally singing to the crowd. They do the number of harpuas and forbans. I didn't count, but they were forbans and harpua were not rare at all in the spring of '92. So they fit a narration in, and then they also made sure that if they're going to put a narration in and they're going to put in a Henrietta, then they damn well also better have these compositional showpieces. And then right next to those, what are beginning to become these improvisational flowers.
Yeah, the structure of Phish show seems really well established, like by the end of this tour, in a way that they'll start to have fun with breaking a year later. Megan, what about you? When you think about they're about to go on tour with Santana, they're about to go overseas, and then they're going to do this Northeastern fall tour, all while recording Rift. What do you see this tour leading towards as we move forward?
The biggest takeaway for me is that they just have a relentless energy, and their stamina is just through the roof. I mean, you think about the way that they're playing. There are some of these shows, you think about like a Forbans and the narration. Trey goes so like into it. Like he just takes such risks. And you think about, I think I was texting you, Brian, about one of them where it's like, I think it's the show you're going to talk about, in this club, and he's just going crazy and talking about like, I mean, he just completely goes down the rabbit hole, and that just takes such courage. And I think they're just playing without a net in a way that they realize really benefits them. And I think that's something they're going to take with them as they start to play bigger places and start to take bigger risks and not be so formulaic. I think it's exciting to see. I think that they were really inspired by when they do take these risks, what happens, and that the audience likes it.
I don't think this is the last time it happens, but I feel like this is the most time that it happens where like the band is so in the weeds on who Phish is and on where Phish is going and what Phish means. And that like sense of like Trey telling these narrations, or, there's the show that you're going to talk about, Meg, where he's explaining secret language, and he's just like holding the crowd's attention for like 11 minutes of narration to explain these ridiculous like jokes that maybe 50% of the crowd is gonna like really obtain. But like, we look back on it 30 years from now and we're like, God, I wish that they would just do the Simpsons tease once, just one time. And like, he is leaning into what it means to be in Phish at this point in time, more than it's not going to die off in the coming years. Like it's not going to die off for until at least the end of the decade. But like they embody what Fish means in such a way here right now. As our wonderful co-host Jonathan says, sleeveless t-shirt Trey shredding like a muscle man. That's the vibe that I get here. RJ, what are your thoughts? Just like as where the tour is at right now, where the band is about to go, what are your thoughts in terms of how this impacts them going forward?
I mean, to me, like, I guess 92 and 93 are sort of in the same group for me, but that might be not right. You know what I mean? Like, I kind of think of like 92 and 93 being when they start figuring out the improv that will then like pick up in 94. But the way you guys are talking about 92 and 93 being that different, I feel like now we need to do something on 93 next so I can compare, because I always like put them into the same like pre 94 bucket, you know? And then 93, obviously there's like a lot more material that starts coming out. But so I don't know. I feel like I'm behind, even though I've listened to Fish for thousands of hours. So now I need to like I need to do more of that.
We talked about this a little bit in the last episode. I mean, I agree with both sides of it. Like there's a part of me that hears 92 and 93 as like a pair together in a lot of senses, but also hears like once the baby grand piano comes in, once the like reality of playing amphitheaters like comes to the fore in early 1993 when they're looking ahead to that summer tour and where they're jamming at by the end of that spring 93 tour. Like that's where I start to hear a separation. But I think I totally agree with you. They sound like a pair in a lot of senses to me. This is the Rift era, if you will. Like those songs are dominating. They're not going to debut. Well, they'll debut a couple Hoist songs, but for the most part, Hoist songs are just like not even going to come to the fore until sometime in early 1994. But I don't know. I think that there's a lot of like small foundational steps being taken right now that are going to lead to this massive breakthrough in August of 93.
I also think their equipment upgrade, like you mentioned, Brian, and also just like the organizational upgrade that they get in 93, you can hear it in the mixes and, you know, they sound more professional by 93.
That's exactly right, Megan. I was about to say 93. Just to me, it does. I lump them together as well. I put 92 and 93 together as the precursor to 94, which in its own way is the precursor to 95. And I guess that made sense considering that was the era where every single night Fish felt like a better band than they had been, you know, the night before. But to me, 93 is just spring 92 on a budget, you know, with a budget. Where you know they have these not only, and by when I say with a budget, Megan, it's the same thing you were talking about. It's the equipment got upgraded, the rooms got upgraded. They began to see what it's like by being on somebody else's tour. They began to see what it's like to do a tour at scale like that. And so I feel like, you know, Trey talked a lot about in the late 90s. There are a lot of interviews with Trey where he talked a lot about the transition to arenas. And for that matter, summer sheds, and about how you have to play differently. You have to learn how to play differently, because when you're inside a hockey rink and the echo of the you know, every note echoes and ricochets against the back wall and goes around the room. It's the reason to this day arena Fish is different than summer shed Fish. You know, and when they play these small places, they play differently. They play more gentle. They drop you'll never see them play Take the A Train and, you know, or things like that anymore, because it loses. Fishman talked about this at one point about how he doesn't, with Stash, he could stop playing all of the hits that he was doing when they were playing theaters, because he said you don't even hear them in the arena, so why do them? You know, and they dropped all these jazz standards, because the jazz standards worked really, really well in theaters. You know, they worked really well in theaters, but in arenas they lose something in translation, and Fish was hyper aware of that. Fish always plays the room.
That's a really good point, and they're about to have this massive upgrade. The thing you said about this being 93 on a budget is really fascinating to me, because I got to imagine that this tour was bare bones, Everyone was exhausted. It was probably a ton of fun. 1992, these guys are like late 20s at this point in time. So like
they are late 20s, and it's funny because Paige has a birthday this month, and he turns 29, and it's during the show that I picked, but it's funny, which is why I know this. But I wouldn't have known that offhand otherwise. But yeah, it's funny because Fishman gives shout outs to everyone in the band talking about how old they are, and they're all babies,
Maybe.
which is crazy to think about. That like their career is about to take this massive transition. In a lot of cases, like there's a lot of fans that just don't go before 1992 when they listen to Fish. This is the same age that the Beatles were when Let It Be comes out, or like when Let It Be was made. Like Fish has got this very interesting luxury of being a band that was able to like make a ton of mistakes. Nobody's paying attention throughout their 20s, so that by the time that they're in their late 20s, kind of figure things out. They've got kids, like life has settled down a little bit more, but they're still on the road. Like now they're playing arenas, and you think about like the Beatles are literally breaking up at this same exact age. But I don't know. I think about this tour of like,
I mean, it's a blessing to be ignored when you're a new band for a while.
Nobody cares, and you just keep doing it.
Fishman calls during that banter. Fishman calls Languedoc grandpa because he was 32.
Oh man. Awesome. Well, let's should we dive
the other
into
funny
these
thing,
shows?
by the way?
Oh yeah, go ahead.
Just by the way, the other funny thing that with that specific banter, one of Fishman's lines has become suddenly one of my favorite Fishman lines of banter, which is, "Anybody else out there having a birthday this year?"
That's great.
Dad jokes.
Yeah.
Near dad jokes. All right, let's dive into these shows. So we've each picked a show from this month that we're going to dive into. I'm going to start just because mine's the first show of the month, and we'll kind of go around from there. I picked 5/2/1992 from the Metro in Chicago, Illinois, right down the street from Wrigley Field. Played just before the Bulls would begin their second round series against the New York Knicks. I promise I'll only make like 5 more references to this throughout the episode. But, I think back to like myself at this point in time. I was 7 years old and I had zero idea that Fish was playing the Metro. And if you like fast forward 30 years, like that's like the most insane thing in the world to me. Like spring 1992 Fish playing in even fast forward 10 years, I would have been just like, my mind would have been blown to go to a show like this. I can't believe it. This show I picked partially, it's Chicago. I love like Chicago in May. RJ, I think you lived in Chicago for a bit, right? Like once spring hits in Chicago, it's like the greatest thing in the world.
Yeah. I like it. I mean, now that it's May here and I remember what spring is like, spring everywhere is just so great.
It's the greatest. And
I think that I'm like a fan of the winter, and then I think every year I realize that I'm actually not.
I really tried this year to just embrace the experience of spring and like the slow coming out of winter that you get, because then when you get to May and the windows are open constantly, and like, I don't know about you guys, but the only thing that really plays in my house at this time of year is the Grateful Dead. And it's just like Jerry's guitar, like walking the dogs, coming back home. And like, I just hear it coming out into the street. It's the best thing in the world. But Fish plays this show at the Metro. I'll just run quickly through this. This show opens up with Runaway Jim, which is one of the, if not the greatest opener the band has. It just like immediately gets you into the show. And from there, you're into a wild Forbin's Mockingbird, Iculus Mockingbird segment that kind of gets to what I was talking about earlier of you're combining all these elements of the overall spring tour in these May 1992 shows, where you get the narration, you get the history that the band is trying to tell you like in the moment. And then you're also going to get, Reba and Beautiful Squirming Coil and Stash. Interestingly, this was right around the time of the Rodney King trial and the riots that broke out in LA. And Trey directly references this in the Iculus, or the famous Mockingbird narration, where he specifically mentions like getting away from all this chaos, all this craziness, going to a place like Gamehenge. And he specifically talks about the riots. He does it again in Stash, which is a very political move for the band at the time. For me, though, this show is all about the David Bowie that has "Will the Circle Be Unbroken," "Get Back," "Aw Fuck," "All Fall Down," "Up, Up and Away," "Random Laugh," and "Pa Pa" signals all in it, and then goes into the very rarely played band crew football theme song, which was played only twice, once on 4/16/1991, and then here on 5/2/92, and is just like a really bizarre chant for the band and for the crew. That segment to me, like I talked about a David Bowie in our April show, like that song is just breaking out of its shell, and you just hear it in such a unique and incredible way here at this point in the tour. Plus the encore, Sleeping Monkey, Big Black Furry Creature from Mars. It's just a fantastic overall show, and it really exemplifies where the band is at this point in time. What were your guys' thoughts on this as you were listening through?
There were just some moments of the show that I felt were kind of foreshadowing Evil Fish in a way that you don't hear as much, and it's really exciting. You can kind of hear them playing with dissonance and darker chords and just sounding more dark. I think so many of these early shows are really bright and so precise and playful and funny, and to hear them start to get dark and dissonant is really awesome. I think this Bowie totally stands out. This maze is incredible. The end of Coil is just absolutely gorgeous. I mean, what he's able to do, and he doesn't even have the grand piano yet. It's just like, it's so exciting listening to that. And it's awesome. I mean, the Yem is super cool and just an awesome version too. I really enjoyed listening back to this show. Beautiful introduction to the show too. These first like 4 songs. I mean, I would die if they opened a show like this. It's just crazy.
And there are a lot of David Bowies from this tour, and I think we hit upon this last time when we were doing April '92, and that's that David Bowie has yet to fully mature. '94 to me is kind of those '94 David Bowies, and then there are a bunch in the mid '90s that are just guaranteed highlights of whatever show that they appear in. That being said, I feel that throughout this tour, this Bowie that you're talking about from this show, and then a few nights later, about a week later, I want to say I have it written down here. Yes, May 8th, in this theater in upstate New York, just outside of Buffalo. They do another Bowie, and these two Bowies combined remind me of what it must be like to have a preteen. Like when you're watching them turn into their own animals and their own creatures with their own ideas and their own personalities, because it's just beginning to pop, and you're just beginning to see what it's truly capable of. And I feel like this is the one example, and then the other one, like I said, is the upstate New York one a week later. Those two in particular from this month. It's like, okay, you guys are on your way, filling out college applications.
Well, as someone who has 2 preteens, I can attest to that. It's also a roller coaster, which is the same way. You never know what you're going to get, right? Like you said, Brian, things change on a dime, and they totally are. And these Bowies, they're just like all over the place. You never know where they're going to go. And I think that's true of teenagers too.
Yeah.
Teenage Fish. I like it.
I don't want to, I don't have a lot to add on the show front, except that like every show, like you guys said, has a Nicholas and a Forbin and a Mockingbird. It's like part of the normal rotation. But this show is, and if you look at Chicago, it's sort of like a good example of their rise and how fast it was over those years. Like in '92, they're playing in the spring '92, they're playing at the Metro, right, which is this venue. And then by the fall, they're playing at the Vic, and then they're playing Aragon, and then the next year they're playing UIC. And it's just like you can see that like just really quick rise in, especially for something that's so far away from their kind of home base, but they keep obviously bringing more people to these shows. And by the time they hit USC, that's like, it's so fast. And you expect this in like New York, Boston, even Philly, but then you look at like Chicago, and it's just amazing how quickly they ascended to like, you know, the biggest venues around. And I wonder if I've been to the Metro Theater because it's still around. I think I've been to the Vic, but like it's a pretty small place, right? And probably under 1,000 or so.
No, I think I did a show there with Electric Beethoven. I think it holds about 2,000.
Oh, does it? Okay.
But I will
Really?
let me check on that. I might be completely off.
I think it's smaller than that, but it's definitely like
Metro Chicago. I'm gonna check because I might be way off.
Didn't that was like the biggest crowd, I think, at the end of the year?
Oh yeah, it's 1,000. It's 1,100. It's
1,100.
Yeah.
And the Vic's like a little bit bigger than that, but they kept just like stepping up, you know.
the Vic is a little bit more of like a proper theater. It's like one of the theaters that they would play throughout 93, 94. The Aragon then gets you into like a bigger room. It's a old ballroom from the 1920s. But to go from the Metro to the Vic to the Aragon, they do that weird show at Tinley Park, which is just south of Chicago, but is like a proper amphitheater that they'd returned to in 97. By all accounts, like they had just like scattered people on the lawn, but then to come back and play UIC twice in 1994. And from there, they didn't really have a venue to play in Chicago. Like they had to go out to the Allstate Arena because they were never going to play like the United Center. But like that track usually happens like for like a popular Chicago band over like a decade to finally reach these arenas, and Fish does it in like 2 years, but in like 4 or 5 touring cycles. It's crazy. Yeah. Plus it's right down the road. The Metro is right down the road from Wrigley Field, which I may have mentioned before, but you know, like you get out of a Cubs game and you go and you see Fish. I did not do research to see if there was a Cubs game that happened this day. I apologize to you all. I did one aspect of sports research, but it's just incredible to think about.
Lazy, Brian. That's just lazy.
It's just lazy. It's unacceptable. And I think we just need to move on to the next show, which is RJ's show from our rivals, our Midwestern rivals down I-94 in Detroit, Michigan. Tell us about 5692.
Okay, I will, but first I will say that if you did go to Wrigley Field that day on May 5th, 1992, you would have seen the Cubs beat the Astros 8-4, and then go down to the show after.
That's
so maybe
it's
for
better than what happened to me in 2005
when
I saw the Cubs lose 8-0 to the Reds, and then I went down and saw Trey play with 70 Volt Parade. But that's for another podcast.
Maybe for a time machine, maybe you should put that on the list. The 5592 that would be good.
70 Volt Parade was back in the Metro?
No, they were at what is the Northerly Island?
Oh yeah, okay. I was gonna say, yeah.
Okay, so we'll talk about 70 Volt Parade another time. But the show I picked was 556. So a few days later, like Brian said, sort of if I had been 3 years older, this could have been a hometown show for me, but I wasn't, so I didn't get to go to this. But it's St. Andrew's Hall, and it's just like this is a 100-year-old venue that still does shows, now. And I'm gonna do what I did last time, and I'm gonna share a photo of the inside of St. Andrew's Hall for the people watching.
Wow.
People listening, you're not gonna be able to see this, but you can Google it.
I love how the lighting guy has a Red Wings hat on. Like,
yeah, you got to
know where you are.
You got to do that. So anyway, a lot of bands have played here in downtown Detroit, and it's sort of a destination for a lot of bands. So I don't know. I mean, I think this is a cool venue, and I actually don't think I've been there, but like, you know, the Chili Peppers and Nirvana and Paul Simon and Bob Dylan and all kinds of people have come through this small venue in downtown Detroit, and Fish was one of those. But this show is, I mean, I guess it's sort of similar to the show that Brian picked, because 4 days later, they played another Foreman's Mockingbird in the first set. You know, it's like, can you get two Foreman's Mockingbirds in 4 days is a pretty wild. And
they
I
were
don't know how many
spoiled back then.
Yeah, exactly. But like Jonathan just said, they were sort of planting the seeds of this overall mythology, which is a good point. And I think that's definitely part of the deal here. But I also just want to say, Benji, I think you mentioned that there were like not that many tweezers. The 5-3 tweezer the day after the show Brian highlighted was really good, but this first set in a 5-6 has a really great Reba jam where you can hear Mike like most prominently of all in this in terms of the jam. And like there's a Maze, a Tila, and a Brother in the first set that all just have these like really loud and really fast Trey solos that are just outrageous. I mean, it's like it's crazy to me how prominent his sound is, but also just how much he's just, like you said earlier, Megan, they're so fast and they don't slow down at all. And then the second set is there's all kinds of crazy shit happening. Like, so there's a Forbidden Mockingbird in the first set, and then the second set there's You Enjoy Myself into Shaggy Dog a cappella without, it in like after that there's a All Things Reconsider, then Bouncing, then Uncle Pen, then Chalk Dust, then Terrapin with Fishman on the vacuum, then Take the A Train, then Golgi, and it's just like what a crazy set too, without a lot of jamming, just running through these songs, but absolutely just like kind of just shredding everything. Really just amazing. So the What You Enjoy Myself with like kind of a little bit of a longer jam into a acapella Shaggy Dog is a pretty cool highlight. But I like this show a lot, and I think I had the tapes and I hadn't gone back to it in a while, so it was fun.
First Shaggy Dog since November 3rd, 1988, 449 shows. And
which makes me think this was really kind of the low-key first big Fish bust out, because if you just looking at years, this was 92. It's rare that there could even be a bust out at that point, but I guess it's at that point in their career where something like that is noticeable suddenly for the first time. Like in 91, there are some bust outs, but they were a lot less exciting because the repertoire overall. But this, if I had been there that night, it would have been, that's a gem. That's a gem.
Yeah, it's huge. I'm looking at so Shaggy Dog's been played 17 times overall, from 10/15/86, a really famous show at Hunt's, through 11/3/88. That's where you get 13 of the 17 versions. And then you get this version, 5/6/92, 450 show bust out, 10/29/95, 359 show bust out, 6/22/2012, 574 show bust out, and then 10/30/2021, a 332 show bust out. It's so wild to see like a song like this that lingers throughout the 80s and then is gone and then comes back in just like these little pockets throughout the band's history. Yeah, that would be a really interesting series. Now that the way that you mentioned that, what were like the first 5 legitimate Fish bust outs. I'm putting that in the doc. We're gonna figure that out. That'll be interesting talk. Put it in. Put it
in the root doc.
Yeah, this show, it's wild. Like the joke being they played Colonel Forbin's famous Mockingbird 4 days apart from each other, and we just kind of see it on a set list. Like, yeah, that's 1992. Like, it's just so wild that, as Jonathan said, as you said, RJ, like they're planting these seeds of like this mythology that's going to build over time. And like, there's no way that they're thinking at this point, like, well, these songs are going to become a bust out because they're such staple songs at the moment. But like, you look back at this period now and you think anybody could have caught a narration at that point. And now if you catch one, it's like once every 70 or 80 shows. And it's this massive deal in the venue, online, all that sort of stuff. Anybody else have thoughts about this show?
I just want to say I'm not a huge fan of the vocal gem, but on this run, they're actually pretty great. And I love how this one ends in Shaggy Dog, but I think they're just really fun and interesting. Oh, they're all really different. It's cool.
I think you've come to the right podcast if you are not a fan of vocal gems. I'll just say that.
Oh, good. We finally have something we don't like on HFPod. Fans will be so happy.
Someone create a thread about it. We don't like something.
Well, I think the vocal gems used to be a lot. I mean, I think when I think of vocal gems, I think of like Gunnison, Colorado, with that You Enjoy Myself. That just that the whole. I mean, that You Enjoy Myself was historic for many reasons, but But I think that there was a golden era of the vocal jams. And I wonder sometimes, this isn't the first time I've pondered this, but I wonder if some of those were at least discussed beforehand, or if they just were in a different place and then they cycled through all those ideas, because now it's just phonetic. And I think that's what we all agree on, that isn't necessarily, doesn't always work. But when they would use vocal jam to kind of do teases and references of other songs and end up in, a Pink Floyd vocal jam, or things like that. I mean, that's when it was really cool.
The Incredible Perp says, I love them, and I specifically miss the Weak Pog vocal jams that they used to do. And this is the beautiful thing. We all have different takes on what works in Phish. I will just say, fast forward 8 years, the vocal jam to End Out 1.0, one of the prettiest things I've ever heard Phish do. It's one of my favorite musical moments that the band has ever played. So, we can knock vocal jams, but there are some good vocal jams. We got.
I also really loved the one from the Ninth Cube. That was incredible.
That was a great one. That was a good one. All right, that was a really good one, actually. Now that I'm thinking about it, yeah, that was a great one. Benjy, I believe you are up next with 5/9/1992 from Syracuse, New York. We are back in the homeland. We're back in Gamehenge, northern upstate New York here at this point in time. Tell us a bit about this show.
Well, I chose this show because it's actually turns out to be my second favorite show from this month. And we'll hopefully, since none of us chose my favorite show, hopefully we'll get to that. We'll have a minute to talk about that. But I chose this show primarily because it was the cassette that I had driving around Camp Hill, Pennsylvania, when I first got really into Phish and, was voraciously trading tapes. And I wanted to get all the harpuas that I could because of, just their harpuas. But this one had Smells Like Teen Spirit is the song that Jimmy listens to and that is teased. And it was concurrent with in 94, which is when I would have gotten this tape. When Kurt Cobain died, there was a rumor, and I mean, it did not come from any place substantial, and I don't know if there was any truth to it at all. But the rumor that I heard on college campus was that Trey was really freaked out by Kurt Cobain's suicide. Maybe true, maybe not. I mean, and if it was true, maybe as much as all of us were. But I just remember that concurrently with getting this cassette and listening to it and hearing the Smells Like Teen Spirit thing, and also thinking at that point, Phish was such a unique entity and unlike anything I had heard in my entire life. And I was already, a huge music fan by this point with, amassing as much knowledge as I possibly could of all these genres and deep diving every which way and having it really be my passion. And when Phish came along, they sounded unlike any of the things that I had been listening to before, with the exception, of course, of maybe some Frank Zappa, some Grateful Dead, their influences. But they were this own entity, and to hear them tease Nirvana, which was a band that I loved, 91, and still at this point, to this day, it was, to me, it was just, there was a cool element to that I really liked. But the show itself really holds up. I think that another thing, by the way, about the tape trading that we don't get these days is I traded for the second set. I never heard the first set until last month, which was also a really cool little element. But I think that you can always tell about a tour and where Phish is as a band by the shape and the size of the tweezers. They're metrics, they're these hallmarks, and they really can tell you a lot about where the band is at that given point. And the tweezers from this month are no exception. And from this one in particular, it's nearly 15 minutes long, which at that time was the equivalent of a 25-minute jam these days. And it's brimming with ideas. From the very start, it's just brimming with ideas. And it's not just the tray shredding that we're talking about. That too. That's hands down what propels this jam forward. But it's brimming with ideas that the entire band just jumps on, and they go off in these, and it's not just, this big canvas. Instead, they're telling a story. They go different places with it. So I love that about the show. And then the rest of the show is that prototype that we've been talking about, how they settle in. I mean, it opens with Runaway Jim and Foam, which it was such those two paired together are classic pairing. They're a classic pairing for a first set opener. That pairing extended into the mid 90s, late 90s as well. But I remember summer 94, Runaway Jim. If they opened with Runaway Jim, you could reasonably guess they're going to go into Foam. Antelope, which closes the set, again, also a big set closer always, is just coming into itself. It's like the preteen that we talked about with David Bowie. This Antelope is basically screaming, pay attention, because I'm about to go places. Not just tonight. I mean, I'm about to go places down the line, and so it's just, it pops right out of your stereo like that. They bring up Fishman's mom. It's to talk about Fishman rather than play the vacuum during They Didn't Know. She was meant to play the vacuum. She ends up giving a speech. And then Fishman later on. And then Fishman later.
You can hear Paige, even Paige says, like, play the vacuum, Mimi.
Yeah.
Like,
exactly right. Like, okay, no, like, she's like, my son, we always knew he was going to play drums in front of a large audience, and look at him now. It's just funny. And then of course there's the proper Henrietta later on in the show with the Crackle and Rosie, closes with the Poor Heart. At this point, I think it's neat that every show they try to do a bluegrass tune, and we see that develop again in the next few years. And then closing with the Tweezer reprise. To me, on paper, let alone in action, it looks like a very prototypical Fish show. It has got all the elements perfectly placed and perfectly played as well. So,
yeah, this Tweezer, Dave's Energy Guide teases in it, and it just like you're totally right. It's brimming with ideas. I was listening to this today. Having your second set start with Susie, Divided Sky, Tila, Tweezer, Harpua, Llama is just ridiculous. I can't really fathom what it would be like seeing that live. Tila's are placed so well throughout this tour. It's like a large theme of the overall tour. But yeah, I love this show. I love I'll pretty much listen to any Fish show in upstate New York and just be happy. And I traveled to upstate New York only once in my life. My wife spent a year in college at St. Lawrence University in Canton, and we went to visit it in 2012 when we were on a cross country road trip. And like just driving through upstate New York, I felt like I was driving through Fish tapes, and like I had to listen to just old Fish shows because you're on like these 2-lane highways going by farmland. You're like right in line with Ontario when you like look at an actual like map of like where you are. It's like the most like rich soil in the Northeast. It's just like a beautiful, beautiful place to be. Amazing restaurants, amazing little towns, and you just drive through these little towns that like the only reason I know some of these towns is because I listen to a lot of Fish. And like I was getting just super excited by highway signs of like, oh my God, look, there's that town that Fish played, and all this sort of stuff throughout the Northeast. But one quick stat.
I'm glad I'm not the only one to do that, Brian.
My wife even thought I was crazy, and I was like, "That's Schenectady, New York. They played a really
I
good
can
show there."
So much better tonight knowing that I'm not alone.
It's like Binghamton. Oh my God! But I was just thinking about we were talking about like how many Forbins, how many Harpuas are in this tour, and I was looking it up. There were 4 Harpuas that were played on this tour alone: 326, 44, 422, and 59. And there were, I believe, at last check, 9 Colonel Forbin and Mockingbirds. 319, 324, 331, 416, 421, 424, 52, 56, and 517. The idea of seeing multiple Forbins and multiple Harpuas in a single tour is just it's not realistic to any of us following Fish today, and it's just wild that like there was a point in time where like you could all but be guaranteed of seeing that. Megan, you have picked what may be the strongest show of this month, a show that I will admit I was considering picking as well because it's just an amazing show. I'm glad that I picked what I did, but tell us what you have picked out here for the final show that we're going to highlight of May 1992.
So I picked 514 at the very famous Capitol Theater in Port Chester, New York. And this I picked, the show's amazing. It's an important show for a lot of reasons. But also, I just have a soft spot for the Cap. As someone who grew up in the Midwest, listening to the famous Grateful Dead shows there, I'm a huge Janis Joplin fan. And knowing that she wrote Mercedes-Benz in the bar next door and performed it for the first time sitting on the edge of that stage, it's just a special room. And now I go see shows there all the time. And it's just one of those places that, it's kind of like rock and roll legacy. It's just a special venue. And I love imagining Fish there in 92. The energy was really big that night. They were starting to outgrow these kinds of venues. This was a sold out show. It's a big deal for them. Yes, Shayna, yay, Cap. That's who I go see all these shows with at the Cap. So we love it. I think that this show is interesting too, because there's a few songs that this is the last time they're ever played is this night, which is just really interesting to me. The first set, they opened with Susie, but then All Things Reconsidered into Sloth, which is the second night in a row that they've done that, which really, you can see that happen a lot on this tour. And it shows they're trying segues out. They're probably rehearsing them. They're thinking a lot about song placement. They repeated 8 songs from the night before. So they're definitely, they have a lot of songs that are in like constant rotation. I think Maze is really when things start to get super interesting. The jamming is like super fast and intense. Paige is on like an organ sounding synth or an organ. I'm not sure. I don't know the technical information, but Trey's solo is just like wailing on these like super high notes. And this is actually the longest Maze to date. So it's the first time that they're kind of actually like taking Maze out on a long walk, and it's creepy. They're doing those echoes with the vocals, which they do a lot on this tour. And it's an interesting thing that they're doing. And then this antelope at the end is just big and boisterous. And you mentioned it earlier, Brian, but having all of these instructions, it's one of the first times I feel like that they're playing really great music underneath the instructions in a way that sounds really kind of seamless and super cool. And they play all the different instructions, and then they go back and Trey talks about each one of them, and they introduce the new, I think it's all fuck symbol. And it's so cool to hear him. I think it's almost like this was an important show to say, like, we're going to have all of these signals that lots of people know about now, but I want this on record, like at the Cap, like these are the signals. There's 5 of them. This is the 5th one. And it's just an awesome version of, I think if you're only going to listen to like a few versions of the secret language, which you should listen to lots, but this antelope is pretty incredible because it's just huge. It's a monster. It's super important. And set 2 is incredible. I think this Fluffhead is just, it's bluesy. It's like really, it's not perfectly played, but there are just some absolutely gorgeous sections. And I think landing into Eliza, which is one of the most beautiful pieces of music that Fish has, this is the last time they have ever played that song. What? Why? That is the bust out we need. Only played 22 times, which is pretty crazy in those 2 years from 90 to 92. Maybe it'll come back this summer. We'll put that on our list.
I would love an Eliza bus. It's short enough. It shouldn't be too hard for them to relearn it. And it just like has such a late night kind of groove to it. And like, I don't know, writing songs about your kids always seems like a good idea. And this song, like, it's not saying anything about his daughter, but like, just having this song out there is like that
written before her birth.
Before her birth. Yeah. Just like it's that sort of statement about like, I don't know. I love it.
It's special. It's meaningful. They should definitely bring it back.
So you guys, by you guys not meaning you, but meaning Fish, since you're obviously listening, what we're saying is bring back Eliza's and also regular Forbins, regular Harpoos. Thanks.
Yeah, exactly.
And All Things Reconsidered.
Yes. So good.
And Lushington.
All Things reconsidered.
Reconsidered. And then, of course, you have to talk about the Weekapog, which is just unbelievable. The weight in Weekapog is so good. Wait. And it's so good because this song, this is the last time they play it, which is also kind of sad. But this song is just so funny out of the way it started, the first time they did it, and everybody hating it so bad, and the audience like screaming at them and yelling at them, and them deciding like, oh no, we're actually going to troll the audience and play this now, which is just so Fish and so who they are. And it's done masterfully in this. It's just, if they find it after this like trilling little riff, and it's absolutely perfect. I was laughing too, looking up like the lyric. If you look up the lyrics of this song, it's hysterical. It's like, wait 56 times, wait 34 times. It's just so stupid and Fish-like in the best way. But yeah, I think that this is, and then this beautiful McGrupp and this Possums, like dark, soulful chords, riffs during the jam. I mean, there's a lot of like bluesy and like almost like, I don't know, just more interesting moments in this show that to me are just really beautiful. You've got those weird Spider-Man teases and Antelope too, that is just like, the show's got it all. It's a super cool show.
Yeah, it's really interesting that this show is played at the Cop, because it feels in a lot of cases like the band recognizes the history of a venue and plays a really remarkable show there at the same time, which is not something that they do throughout their entire career, where they play a venue that is like very clearly on their list of places that they want to play. But when you think about this in the context of the overall tour, we're 4 nights away from the tour concluding. They're right back in their home territory. Like, this has to feel in a lot of cases. And shout out to Wilkes One, who's been hanging out the whole show, attended the Capitol show on 5/14/1992. Share one of your thoughts here, and we're going to post it and we're going to talk about it. But what are one of your memories of that show? Because that is really cool that you are here. I totally get you. It almost feels, Meg, you said something like this is going to be like the secret language at the Capitol Theater, like it's going to be preserved for time. You almost get a sense that like they were thinking of this show as being an official release at the time, just in the sense that like there's every aspect of Fish 1992 that's here. Benjy's talked a lot about the formula and the format that's been set from a set listing standpoint, and it's all here in this show, where you get early first set riff songs, you get the secret language in like a big first set closing run like an Antelope. You're in a point in their history. Go ahead.
I was just going to say the other thing about the show, we almost touched upon it. Megan, you went right to the HFPod, but the Mites song, earlier in this episode, I talked about how this tour has some holy shit moments. This Mites song had a holy shit moment where I'm looking at this, I'm going, what? Like, why didn't I remember this because I've heard this show, multiple times, over the course of the years, but re-listening to it, I had forgotten about that. And listening to this whole month, I don't think there was a moment when I think that there's a shift in Mites grooves that happened over the course of this tour, where it went from being a compositional showpiece, kind of centered around hydrogen in the middle, right? So it was this compositional showpiece that they did, and it went from that into suddenly they have the ability to make it an improvisational experiment as well. And they, 93 is when we really see that blossom, at 93 and beyond. But in 92, I mean, this one in particular really screamed to me that there's a lot. I mean, that the Wiki podcast we're all talking about has that weight jam in the middle, but it's preceded by this Might song that just has some unbelievable improvisation in it.
Yeah, the improvisation is there, and you get the gimmicks. You get songs like McGrupp that I'm just going to check this live in the moment. I think this is pretty rare on this tour.
We can add that to the list of things we want to come back more often to.
This is the only McGrupp of the spring 92 tour. I thought that was right. It was played on 12/31/91, and then 50 shows later it's played at the Cap, and then it's played only 2 more times in 1992, 7/15/92 and 11/27/92, again from the Capitol Theater. So it's a rare song to be played at this point in time. Plus you get Stash very late in the second set. There's just a lot of cool elements to this show that like really feel like they're embodying the entire history of this venue as they're playing this show. And you're so close to the tour finale that you're at a point where like, okay, we've got to throw something down. And we're at a point where like, you know, we're just feeling like everything being on the table. Any other thoughts you guys have about this?
Yeah, well, I think that wraps up this the Capitol Theater. But can I tell you guys what my absolute favorite show of this month is?
Absolutely.
Yes.
So I almost wish I picked it. I picked Syracuse because I already gave you the reasons why. But it is 517 from a couple nights later from the Achilles Rink in Union College, Schenectady, New York. It's in a 2,500 room, or rather an ice rink, at the end of this 53 show tour. And it was the only show from this tour to get the live fish treatment.
I know. It's
So,
crazy.
and when you listen to it, though, you understand why. It consistently blew me away. And I forgot that it was a live fish release. And I was listening on a re-listen. And then all of a sudden I was like, wait a minute, this rings a bell. And it has an all-timer possum and Harry Hood all-timer fourth time. That Harry Hood is just talking about brimming with ideas and this freshness and this urgency, and that was present. It has a silliness, and the brother kind of goes off the rails and then goes right into sanity. I mean, it has all those elements. It has a Forbin's Mockingbird, complete with a narration.
Forbin's.
Yeah, complete with a really cool narration.
Yeah, Trey's like, they're like on ice and they're like lifting up, and Trey's like, surrender to the void, Cloyd. Like, it's really cool.
Exactly. It's very similar to the. It reminded me of the Forbins from 12/30/93, from Portland, because he's using the ice rink and talking about how there's the ice beneath it. But what an incredible and the stash is great. It's just an incredible show.
That's a great one.
That was my second choice for show I was going to talk about, because it's just incredible. I mean, in that sanity too, there's like moments when you can hear them almost thinking like, can we go somewhere else with this? I don't know. There's just, you can hear them almost like trying different things out. Like they start to explore space a little bit, but then it just like quickly picks back up into like the silly lyrics, and you're kind of like, no, just stay there. Like, it's so great.
Yeah. And I wonder too, I mean, hindsight gives us the ability to look at it with these filters, but it's the end of this massive, 50 some date tour, 53 date tour. It's right before the tour closer. It's right after the Capitol Theater. And as we've learned from seeing 4-night New Year's runs and stuff like that, Halloween runs, oftentimes after a big show that they're looking forward to, and suddenly this is their chance to blow, like all that nervous energy is out the window, and now they can, by being relaxed, it allows them to take more risks, and often the times those shows are the keepers, but where a lot of this magic happens. On the other hand, though, it wasn't in front of nobody. It was a 2,500 seat place, which was big for that. That's twice the size of the Capitol Theater, And so I don't know what the capacity. I don't know what the ticket sales were that night, but the fact that they're there in this ice rink, they're clearly excited about that, and they're clearly excited to be home. I imagine that probably a lot of their friends and their fans from that whole region, they're from their headquarters, are attending after, giving them a grand welcome after being out west. And it's kind of like the idea of the hero, where they go out and they have to leave their homeland, and they get all this wisdom and these magical gifts, and they have to come back and return with the boon.
Well, yeah, it's interesting because we talked about this in the last 2 episodes. I hadn't mentioned it here today yet. Like the track of this tour, it begins in the Northeast. It begins in early March on the East Coast. Is you get these like whispers of really nice days that are to come, and they go throughout the Northeast. They go down to the South. They end March in Missouri. They start this journey out west with April 1st, Kansas, go up the Pacific coast, and they end April in Wisconsin. They've come back across the northern route, I-90, I-94, into Madison, Wisconsin. And then they do May starts in Wisconsin, in Milwaukee, and it goes through the Midwest and then up into New York and does this like loop and lap around New York, Massachusetts, before ending here in Schenectady, before going back to Burlington. And it's this sense of like, we're home, but we've got one more night to let our hair down and to just let loose as much as possible before we get back to the Flynn, which will be their first Flynn show in some time.
And the Flynn felt very much like a tour closer that they, I don't know if they, I'd have to think about it. I don't know if they do the type of tour closers anymore that I'm thinking about, but in the 90s when they closed, it was kind of like they're playing their favorite songs that they love to play because they know that they're not going to get a chance to play them for a while. And there's an energy to it, but it's usually not the best show of the tour. You know, the opening night and the closing night are usually not the best of the tour. And I feel like with the Flynn, they came back. There's a lot of filler on the live Fish release from the Flynn, so you can hear it in high def quality, and it's fantastic playing. It's a band that just played 53 dates, you know, and are as tight and in as best spot as they've ever been at that point. But the night before is where is where it all hangs out.
It's also interesting. I'm looking at this. The Schenectady show is played on a Sunday night, which means that the Flynn was played on a Monday, which you wonder, I don't know this in the moment, but you wonder if the Flynn was added late as, let's do one more show. The Flynn's open on Monday night. Let's play one more night on tour, because this, you would have people, Schenectady is a quick drive, you know, relatively speaking, from Vermont. So you'd have people in their, you know, larger, you know, nucleus of Northeastern Fish fans being able to make the journey. It's a bigger venue, as you said. So like a lot of people can get in. There's probably tickets available for lots of people, but this is a great show. The other one that I had listed that we should at least highlight is 5/8, which we can do quickly, from North Tonawanda, New York, at the Riviera Theater. Just a really strong set list. You got a Curtain, Cavern, Reba, 3 songs to open a show. Come on, that's just amazing stuff.
That's the one I mentioned too, with the David Bowie.
Great David Bowie with All Fall
Bowie.
Down. And then you've got just like random songs in the second set with Magia, Maze, You Enjoy Myself, kind of all together, and a Big Black Furry Creature from Mars encore. And that is a Friday night show. So, you know, you're seeing the last week of the tour at that point in time. It's their first show in the Northeast proper. They played Cleveland the night before. And so it's really where you're starting to see like the end of the tour happen. But
beautiful Reba too.
Beautiful Reba. I mean, this is just these last 10 days. It had to feel like such a victory lap for the band. And I think like, you know, the Syracuse and the Schenectady and the Portchester shows, the cap shows that you guys highlighted here, really just showcase a band that is in kind of this dual celebratory mode while also looking ahead, which is some of my favorite type of Fish, regardless the era.
And it feels like a victory lap for them for sure, like you just said, but it also feels like a victory for us going back, as Fish completists, going back to listen to it. Because some of those March shows, if you really want to be a completist and listen to every one of them, it can be a little tedious. You know, you get to see some really bright moments and there's some excitement there, but it's not edge of your seat always. Whereas I feel by May, these last 10 shows are just edge of your seat. You know, there's just stuff that to this day, listening with current Fish and all this stuff that's been, you know, it's been really exciting to be diving into the MSG shows and listening to those on repeat, and 4.0 Fish and all the gems, and to listen to this side by side with it, it holds its, you know, it definitely holds its own.
Yeah, it holds its own, and you can hear it's been really fascinating to hear this tour, because you're right, like we've heard the foundation of where Modern Fish is going, and then we've heard them expand on it. And as they leave this tour, we're going to see a band move into probably their most celebrated period. And all of that has to have a foundation to it. And there's a foundation to this foundation. We can continue to go deep as much as possible here. We can go back and do 91, 90, 89. We can do all of this. We're doing this in scattered ways, but like focusing on spring 92 as kind of this starting point foundationally has been really enlightening and really fun for me. So, and I hope it has been for you. And I hope it has been for you all out there, dear listener. Last question for the two of you. What is your favorite month as well as your favorite show from the overall Spring 92 tour, and why? Megan, we're going to start with you.
I think I have to say April. I really love that West Coast run of the April shows. I don't know if I can pick a favorite. I'll have to remember which one I said last time, but I really liked the 416 and the 421 show. And I just think April, there's something magical going on out there on those West Coast shows.
There really is. Benjy, what about you? Are you going to differentiate, or you got the same answer?
Well, so as we established last time, April 92 is considered the first straight month of fish, and which I agree with. But what I wasn't counting on was that it's the first straight month of fish, but fish was still getting better by the day at that point. So I think, much to my surprise, I think that in the past couple of weeks listening to May, I think that some of these shows really, maybe it's because I wasn't as familiar, whereas April 92 I had heard a lot of over the years. In May, I only heard a few shows over the years, and going back and diving in, I was just blown away by the consistency of them and how every night they feel like a better band than they were the night before. So I think May 92 might be, April is when the first great month, but May is when they're becoming the greatest fucking band on the planet. But all the semantics aside, my favorite show still has to be it's the 421 from Eureka, California, which was my pick for the April and show that we did. And the reason being is that even though in May there's a little bit more shreddiness and there's a little bit more of the some of the fish that I love, the edge of your seat, holy shit moments from Trey, in the mites grooves and in the tweezers. The 421 has the silliness of fish in a campground in Mendocino County, California, on 421. So you can imagine what you can smell in the air that night, and you hear it with the lively up yourself. It's a band that was not in the spotlight. It was like they were acting as if nobody was listening, and they have the Capitol Theater show. They're in the spotlight, right? They know they're in the spotlight, and they're performing as such. But on a campground out west, it was almost like a day off for them, like where they got to play, and they got to, that lively up yourself is just so playful, and they were just playing to crack each other up at that point. And that night to me just has this lighthearted playfulness that we still get sometimes in shows, but it's very rare that we get to because they always have a spotlight on them now.
Yeah, I'm torn. I'm inclined to say April, but there's a part of me that listening to these May 92 shows was quite a revelation. Like, I knew April was great going into it, and I still know, and like listening to it as consistently as we were, but there is something about these May shows where they're bringing all these things that they've learned over the last 2 months, and they're applying them across each show. So I'm going to remain undecided because I'm wondering if May is the stronger month in my mind right now. I don't know. It's weird. It's really weird.
You are verbalizing my inner conflict.
It's a serious conflict right now.
But you know what I think it is? It's that like you said, May feels like a victory lap. And so that's what it is. April, they won April. Yeah. And now they get to celebrate. And the celebration has the grand finale fireworks.
And I think, the thing that adds challenge to it is like that week, that 416 to 421, that is one of the strongest weeks of fish history, no matter what. And that probably puts the month over if you're trying to like compare, one versus the other. I think I walked away from these May listens thinking less about the process of, okay, I have to listen to a bunch of May 1992 fish. I know I'm going to love this, but like, we've got a podcast to do, so we've got to talk about this, to then putting them on and being like, holy crap, there's so much here to dive into. And whereas April, it was kind of this like, every time I go back to those mid-April shows, I'm like, this is such a singular moment. But I will agree with consensus. 421 is by far, I still haven't heard a show that I would put on over 421 in May 92. And if I had to have like a desert island, you get one Fish show from each tour. No Emmys, like you can't pick any more shows, Brian. You have to have one show from each tour. I'm picking 421.92 without question, because that show just like, that feels like future Fish in a way that nobody could really tell at that point in time. So this has been really fun to spend the last couple of months going through this tour. We are going to be doing some dives into summer 92 to celebrate the 30th anniversary of that. We will also do some dives into fall 92 to celebrate the anniversary of that, as well as New Year's Eve 92. So there's a lot we're still going to cover. This 30-year look back. I feel like I've learned a lot about this period. It's been really fun to talk with the two of you, I guess the three of us, about this really important shift in Fish history at this point in time. So thank you all for being willing to go down this rabbit hole. We are on a break from listening to from listening to 1992 Fish for some time, but this has been a lot of fun. Benjy, as always, it is incredible to have you on. We're going to have you back on to talk through whatever shows you're at this summer, as well as more 1992 and more. There's more to talk about.
I am headed to Charleston, so I'm really excited about that. The venue looks really cool. I'm looking for floor seats, but I'm sad otherwise, and I just can't wait. I expect a lot from this tour.
Well, let's have you on to review one of those shows. We'll text about that. That'd be awesome. And just publicly, I want to give a huge round of applause to Benjy for all of your work on Undermine season 3. You came on to write for the show for season 2 and stuck around here for season 3. You and I have spent hours and hours on the phone. It has been so enjoyable. You did an incredible job documenting the Baker's Dozen. Our last episode comes out next Wednesday. But we're done. Like we got all of our homework done early, so now we can just enjoy this episode, which just came out today on Jamfilled, and our next one, which will come out next Wednesday.
The homework took a lot longer than I thought, but here it is.
Always does. It always
but I feel like it's like a service you guys are doing. This is like an important moment in history. We need this stuff documented. It's like anthropologically or sociologically, whatever you want to say. This is important information. So I look forward to Undermine the minute it drops. I'm so excited every week. It's been awesome.
The band advertised their season when they raised the giant donut up at the end of their New Year's in April show. But yeah, I mean, it was fun. It's been fun with you guys here to go back and listen to Spring 92 and discover May in a way that I hadn't before. I mean, as we all said, we know April's great. We all know that. But May too, that was wonderful little deep dive. And with the Baker's Dozen, again, I think we saw it in real time play out, and we got to revisit it since. But revisiting it in this way of deep diving really was cool. It was really a lot of fun.
Right there with you, man. We'll have you back on for Charleston, and safe travels, and enjoy the Fish here.
Awesome. Thank you guys for having me.
Bye, Benjy. Thank you so much.
All right. So we're going to be transitioning now from looking back into the past of Fish to looking forward to the future. We have 2 episodes coming up next week where we're going to be talking 2022 Fish. Our first one, I can't wait for. I'm really excited for. I've already started prepping for it. One of the first HFPods I listened to with Jonathan on it, who, if you're still watching, hey, man, hey, we can't wait to have you back. Jonathan built a live bait for the summer 2015 tour. And I was like, that's such a great freaking idea. The band does this. Why don't we all do this? And he did such a great job compiling it. And then they played it at the end of the episode. So we're going to do that. And we're going to release it we're going to release our live bait either with the episode when it comes out or shortly thereafter. We'll figure out that whole process. But we're all picking a jam from either the venue or the region that the band is playing at, the same way the live bait does. And we're going to release our own HFPod live bait. And we're going to be talking through that next Monday. I can't wait for that. It's going to be really, really fun. And then on next Wednesday, we're going to be talking about our summer 2022 wish list. What songs does Fish have to play or else? What songs have to be jammed or else? What shows have to be good or no, I'm just kidding. Just, what do we want to hear this summer? It's going to be fun. It's going to be loose. And then we'll be coming back the following week. We'll be starting our quick hits to recap summer tours. So I'm really excited. Meg, are you excited?
Easy. I'm so excited. I can't wait to start thinking about summer. It's my favorite time of the year.
You're not catching any shows this first run, are you?
No, because I'm still teaching, so I'm not going to catch any. It's kind of a bummer, but I won't be seeing them until July.
It's okay. It's going to be, I'm really excited for just having like 10 days of, hey, another Fish show tonight, and I'm going to webcast it. Hey, another Fish show, and then we're going to talk about it, and then I'm going to listen to it. And then there'll be a break, and then they'll come back for the main course. And this is like, you go to a nice restaurant and they give you a really good appetizer, and then they're like, we'll just wait on that a little bit. And you're like, yeah, I'm just going to hang out. I'll order like another drink here at this point in time. I'm just going to enjoy the conversation. And then the food's going to come back again. But that like middle point after the appetizer, before it's magic. Just magic. I don't know what it's like to go out to eat anymore because I have kids and I just never do that. But like, that's what I envision it being like.
You imagine. Well, I'm excited too because it's the first tour that I'm going to be on HFPod for, really the first full tour. So I'm super excited to talk to you and everybody on HFPod about all the shows. It's going to be so fun.
As well as we are to talk to you and all of you out there. Quick reminder before we go, if you are going to any of these shows, Orange Beach, I think is what it's called, Charleston and Deer Creek, hit us up. Let us know. We will get in touch with you about joining us for the recaps. But we need to tell you one last time. Do you want to do the Sunset Lake? Do you want me to? How do you want to tell us more about it?
I would love to tell us about it. Yeah, Sunset Lake CBD is a majority employee-owned hemp farm located just outside of Burlington, Vermont. For years, Sunset Lake was a dairy farm producing milk for Ben & Jerry's ice cream. In 2019, they diversified and started growing hemp for CBD. Sunset Lake CBD embraces Vermont's tradition for land stewardship by using sustainable and regenerative farming techniques. To build and protect healthy soils, they are 100% pesticide-free. They use minimal tillage and implement cover crops and crop rotations. They also serve as a research farm for the University of Vermont agronomists to study hemp and inform best industry practices. And breaking news, Brian, the sleeping CBD gummies are on the website.
Woo!
Yes.
Can't wait. I need
It's a woo moment. It's true.
It's a big woo moment.
Now, I enjoyed taking their gummies for CBD, but now they have sleep ones that are formulated to help you sleep. So excited to get some of those. So check them out today at sunsetlakecbd.com. Use the coupon code HFPod for 20% off all products. Sunset Lake CBD, farmer owned, Vermont grown.
And we want to tell you as well about Cash or Trade, which is the only secondary ticketing marketplace where fans buy, sell, and trade tickets at face value. Fans are able to DM each other before, during, and after a transaction. You can rate and review each other when a transaction is complete. No added fees to sell your tickets. All sales are fully protected by Cash or Trade's trader protection policy, which guarantees your money back. Users can avoid purchase fees with a gold membership subscription. Visit Cash or Trade to learn more, as well as to use their services. And with that, I will bid you all adieu. Quick question here from Incredible Perp. Will you guys be doing any live on location HF pods this summer? We're not ready to announce it yet, but we have 3, possibly 4 in the works that we will be announcing here very, very soon. Really excited to be able to do some of these in front of you all and hopefully see some of you on tour this summer. So great question. We will have a little bit more information about that to follow. We will not be doing any during this first leg, but we are looking towards the second leg for a couple. So with that, it's going to be fun. It's going to be really fun. Thank you all for hanging with us here today. And for those of you who have been on the Spring 92 journey with us, thank you. It's been a ton of fun for us. And we'll see you all here next week, which is Fish Tour Week.
Yay.
See y'all.
Bye, everyone.